All right, we got people coming in. Awesome. Perfect. What's up, everyone? Michael here with CompanyCam, and it's last Wednesday of the month, so it's a webinar Wednesday here at CompanyCam. And today we are talking with Eric Weddle of Weddle Sons Roofing. Eric, thanks for jumping in with us today.
My pleasure, Michael. Good to see you.
Absolutely. So we'll let people kind of trickle in here slowly but surely. And while we're doing that, just a few housekeeping items for everyone. First off, I'm sure most of you have been in Zoom before, in Zoom webinars, but just a couple, using Zoom just to make sure we get any questions, Q&A, that kind of stuff. So you have two options to communicate with myself and Eric throughout this webinar. Option one is in the chat feature. So if you guys all want to find the chat feature and just let us know where you're joining from, just so you can get familiarized with that. So chat feature, let us know where you're joining from, test that out. If you have questions, however, if you want to just add on a little dialogue or whatever, that's the chat feature. If you have questions throughout the webinar, to make sure we get those answered for you, if you find there's a little Q&A button here, kind of at the bottom of the screen there, dead center, you can ask your questions there. What's great about that is they don't get buried. So I will actually either have to ask or type an answer to you. Sometimes if there's a CompanyCam specific question, I'll just type it. Or if it's a question for Eric, I will make sure we get that asked at some point in time throughout the webinar. So two places that you can interact with us, and definitely want to have that interaction throughout the process here. So let's go ahead and kick things off. Before we dive into kind of, the reason that we're here and the topic we want to talk about, Eric, how about you just give a little bit of background on yourself and Weddle Sons, what led you into the industry, those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Eric Weddle. I'm one of the two partners in Weddle Sons. We do roofing, solar, and other energy projects started in Kansas. We have operations in Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, a little bit into Missouri, Iowa, Wyoming, but about 7 or 8 permanent locations across the central states. And so this is a company that actually started with my brothers when we were teenagers. And so a story that I like to tell people, it's 100% true, is we called the business Weddle Sons because we wanted our clients to think that there was an adult behind it somewhere, when in fact it was a bunch of teenagers. So now we have some sons among us and daughters who hopefully will be part of the business someday. But that's how we got started about 24 years ago, and just been growing since then, and made more of a concerted effort to grow into a multi-location regional business more in the last 8 to 10 years.
I love it. I love it. And that's, I gotta say, that's pretty darn creative for some teenagers to say, you know what, we can't call this a few teenagers roofing. We better call this something else. And so yes, that's a really cool story.
And full credit to our parents, my dad especially. He had none of the benefit, but we did dump some of the early liabilities on him. He had to sign for our first credit account. He had to register our first truck. So he was certainly, has always been a trusted advisor.
I love it. So, well, we're here today to talk about business efficiency. And I'm guessing that since day one, back when you were a teenager and operating, the start of a business to today, there's been tons of changes. Obviously, technology playing a large role in that. But at the highest level for you, before we dive kind of into some, nuanced things, how important is that, analyzing my business and increasing my business from an efficiency standpoint, either quarter over quarter, year over year, whatever it is? Obviously, everybody's looking and analyzing their business at different points in time. But how important is that to growing and scaling, in your case, that multi-location business?
Yeah, well, obviously we see it as completely central to our ability to grow. And like many of the people who might be on this call, other people who are running businesses, um, a lot of it is just learned on the job. We every year we kind of look at how our processes have gone and we ask ourselves a question: what are the things that we got by with this year but are not going to work next year at 20% bigger sales? What are the things that we just, we're just good enough to work for us now, but aren't going to work for us in the future, aren't going to work if we grow, won't handle scaling up? And so, yeah, it's certainly, and the more, the more efficiently we run our business, the better result our clients get, the more competitive we are in the market. If we're not focusing on this, certainly all of our competitors will be. And it's what in the end lets us grow, but also deliver better and better results for our clients.
Yeah, for sure. And so like, if we were to break this down, piece by piece, I've got a stat that you shared with me before we jumped on the live here, talking about how you grew last year and you compared your growth to your overhead, which is, I think, an awesome thing. You grew top line revenue by 85%, kept overhead increase to only 39%. So obviously that's great. There's obviously efficiencies, those kind of things. If we were to even take one step backwards, though, how important from a business perspective and business owner perspective is it to really dive in and know those numbers? I don't know how active you are on the social media end of things, but I love when I see some of these trainers and different influencers in the space talking about, what is your profit margin in these things? And just, not even knowing my profit margin as a contractor is kind of a big deal. And so for you, how like, I'm sure it didn't start day one where you really knew those numbers where you're like, oh, top line revenue went up 85%, overhead only went up 39% this year. We did great. When and how did you make that concerted effort to really dive in and know those numbers?
Yeah, not as soon as we should have, certainly. Again, when we started, we were teenagers, we were living at home. Our overhead was next to nothing. And so we had that luxury of kind of learning what we were doing without the pressures that a lot of folks probably face. But yeah, you have limited time every year. We only have so much time. We only have so much attention. And if you don't have those metrics, you don't know where to spend that time. We might know, all right, we can see how much money's in the bank account at the end of the month, each month. But when you have large accounts receivable, that may not tell you anything about where your sales are going. You may not have a sales problem, you may have a collections problem. And so, yeah, if you don't know those numbers, you'll know that there's a problem. You'll know that there's a need for improvement, but you won't know where to start, or you won't know which things are going to actually bring about change. I'm notorious for spending a great deal of time and attention on things that really aren't going to move that needle. And so metrics are certainly a way to keep me accountable and a way for us to focus our team's attention. We only have so many things we can undertake each year. Let's do the ones that really count.
For sure. And I
don't those want to things digress. Change. Sometimes we used to have a receivables issue. We've gotten a lot better at that. Now it's a different thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't want to digress too much into the numbers piece of it, but I just wanted to make sure that, as we dive into this topic and we use that kind of as, okay, hey, top line revenue goes up by this much. How does that compare to overhead? That we at least gave a little bit of attention to that. But the line that you use that I want to kind of hone in on here is, obviously you said lots of things contributed to the top line revenue going up and the overhead going up at a much slower rate. But for you guys, process automation was a big enabler to that growth. Let's like break down process automation, kind of talk about some of the, building blocks or guiding principles of process automation for you guys, and how you're becoming more efficient when it comes to that.
Yeah, I would love to do that. So, a big place that we start is just thinking about what are the things that we do that really add value to our clients, to our work, and what are the things that are waste, administrative busy work, record keeping, data entry, things that they're part of our process, but they don't really add value. And one kind of guiding principle for us is we deal with lots of clients, lots of projects, lots of information, names, addresses, contact info, project details, dates, all these different things. And so one of the things that we ask ourselves as we go through the process of our work is, once we've collected a piece of data, the client's name, and that's associated with an email address, it's associated with a phone number, it's associated with a type of work, scope of work, any number of things. We're going to need to use that information at all kinds of different stages through the rest of that client's life cycle with us. We're going to use it when we inspect their property. We're going to use it when we submit an order to our supplier. We're going to use it when we prepare a quote, when we invoice, when we give them a warranty document. All their name, address, contact information is going to be in each one of those things. And so kind of our starting point was, well, once we collect that information the first time, we should never be entering that information again somewhere else. It should be passed through. And there's great technology tools that allow us to do that now. We're not always available to us. That's where we got started. And then we branched on from there into all kinds of other things. But Michael, one thing that I always think about, I take kids to the doctor occasionally, you probably do too. When I show up there, I usually get 3 to 5 forms, and I have to put the same information on every single form by hand. And then someone else is going to take that information and either type it in or not. But all of that time, and in the meantime, I had made an appointment. They already had all of that information in their system. And so those are the sort of things that we look at and we say, well, that's wasteful. That's unnecessary. And we can eliminate that. That's a very simple starting point. And then as we started from there, we started to look at, well, what are the other things that what are the other pieces of information that we collect and then get reused in other areas? Can we move those things automatically, take that burden, that administrative burden off of our team so that they can spend time doing what they're actually really good at?
Yeah, I love the doctor analogy there. And I love it for a couple of reasons. One, thinking internally, making it to where you're not being redundant with your team and that they're, not collecting that same information over and over and over. But the other is, thinking about your client on the other end of it. And it's, Eric, you've asked me for my email 7 times now, and you've asked me for my phone number 14 times. And I keep giving you all the same information and just,
Right.
So it's kind of making that experience great on both ends of hey, this isn't an awful experience for my employees. They're able to not have to do this redundant data collection. And it's also a good experience for our client because they're not having to do, like you said, the same form 3 or 5 times. Before we went live, I was telling you about, I took our newborn to the doctor 4 times in a week. And I did the same forms all 4 times. It was the same process every single time. And it was just kind of frustrating on my end because I'm like, you took a scan of that insurance card just yesterday. Nothing's changed since yesterday.
Right.
And so I think just making that a good experience on both ends is very important. For you guys, when you think about that and that automation, you mentioned technology. How difficult has it been to kind of put the pieces together? I've got a presentation that I do at different events where I talk about, building that tech stack. It's like Legos, and Legos scattered on the floor if you have kids can be a nightmare because you step on a Lego and it's super painful. And I think a lot of times contractors think of that technology scattered Legos, and it's like, this is going to be painful, and they just shy away from even like taking that first step into it. For you guys, how has putting those Legos together, how has that process been? Has it been as difficult as maybe you thought at first? Has it been easier?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a great time to be alive if that's what you're trying to do. The tools that we have at our disposal now are amazing. And, a lot of these things are like a lot of the things that we do today are things that we conceptualized years and years ago. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? But I'm too dumb to figure out that, how to write API calls or even what an API call is. And I'm too cheap to hire an expert and work with them to develop it. And so these things existed just in our mind. And then really just in the last, I would say we really focused on this in the last 6 or 7 years. Just some incredible tools have come along that also keep getting better and better. And they make it easy for people like me to do these things. It gets easier every single year. And I think the great thing about some of the tools that are available is you don't have to, you can start very simple. The way we started was just, we wanted to collect lead information from our website. We wanted to pull information from our website and put it into our CRM. And I think most CRMs today probably have that built in. And that's true with a lot of our things. Like we will create something and then it will get incorporated into one of our existing applications, and we can get rid of our workaround. We started very simple. And then once we did that first thing, we started thinking about, well, here's another, wouldn't it be nice if we could do this? And through trial and error and through the support of some other really sharp team members at the time who helped get this going, we just did a little more and a little more. And throughout this process, we, now our team thinks about, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we could do X? So we'll go out and we'll find a software that does that thing. Give an example. Wouldn't it be nice if we could send notification emails to our clients that were customized and, dynamic, mentioned their name and address and gave them their target project date and some other things, but it's from our own domain and it's in our own template. Well, I can't do that in our CRM, but I can use the CRM to trigger. So when a project reaches a certain stage, all that information gets pushed out to Mailgun and it sends an email to our clients. So, our team brings ideas all the time. It's very easy to get started, and it can really suck you in because you start to find more and more things to get excited about. I have a long list of things we haven't even touched yet.
Yeah. So 2 things I want to break down there. First off, as you are exploring those ideas, or wouldn't it be nice ifs, how important is it to think about how that piece of technology, or if we're going to use the Lego analogy, how that brick will fit into the set that we're building over here, if that makes sense. So it's like, yeah, it would be really nice if I could put a window into this house that I'm building over here out of Legos. But does it fit? Do I have that? So, and you mentioned API calls and those things that, the more you do it, the more you're able to like talk at a high level through those, but how important is like looking at that to where it's like, hey, can Mailgun or can CompanyCam or can my CRM talk to these other pieces of technology?
Right. I would say it's become less and less important. You guys, I know you guys work a lot with Zapier. I don't know if it's pronounced Zapier or Zapier. I've heard both.
I've heard both as well.
Okay. I'm going to call it Zapier. And if I got it wrong, sorry, guys. That's what got us started. And that's really aimed toward people like most of us probably, who know our way around a computer, who understand something about data structure, but not a lot, and don't do programming. CompanyCam works incredibly with Zapier. And so for us, that's really the main, and we're looking at adding a piece to our overall system. That's kind of our starting point. We say, well, does this work with Zapier? Because if it works with Zapier, it'll probably fit in with everything else that we do. And when we first got started 6 years ago in this, we were lucky because our CRM worked with that, and 3 other things worked with it that we used, and that was enough. Today, it's very standard. There are a few things that don't, and there's ways to address that now too. And in fact, if you're not tech savvy enough to know how to do those kind of unsupported things in Zapier, now you can ask ChatGPT and it will tell you, here's how you do this. I did that for the first time a couple of weeks ago. I wanted to go find some geographic coordinates. Now there's nothing native to Zapier that would do that. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, how do I do this? Please. I always say, please. I don't know, even with machine. And it said, you go and you do this, and you write this code and stick your API key in here, and off it goes. And it worked. It was incredible. So I think going back to your main question, like, it's more and more accessible to these sorts of solutions for your business are more and more accessible to regular people like us.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. And I think I can tie it to the Lego analogy is the great thing about Lego is if it's Lego brand, it doesn't matter what set it comes from. The bricks all interchange and they all work together. And Zapier is kind of that Lego brand from a technology standpoint, where it's like, hey, yep, I'm going to look at Mailgun, or I'm going to look at whatever piece of technology. A great spot to start is it in Zapier? Like, okay, I can probably do a lot of the stuff there. And what we've found even from CompanyCam is zaps that you are creating, that our customers are creating, have led us to integrations, because it's like, oh, we can even do more if we get direct with that. But that's a great starting point to where it's like, hey, let's check Zapier. The other piece that I wanted to break down that you mentioned is bringing your team into the conversation and empowering your team to say, hey, Eric, or hey, C-level, it would be really nice if we could do this. Have you found that A, your team enjoys that, but B, that you've gotten a lot more ideas, and that that's driving a lot of that efficiency as well, as like, hey, the guys that are out in the grind every single day feel empowered to share these ideas with us. Thus, we're becoming more efficient.
Definitely. I do have one question. I might just answer this really quickly and return to yours, just because I don't want people to be asking. So I had a question about what is Zapier, and super important. And I apologize, we didn't kind of give a lead into that. So just in a very basic sense, we'll talk about it more, but Zapier is like it's almost like a delivery service between applications. And Zapier it's a software platform that will connect to all your other things. It will connect to QuickBooks. It will connect to CompanyCam. It will connect to, I'll show you a visual in a little bit of how we use it. And it works with triggers and actions. And so Zapier will, I can tell it, hey, when this trigger happens, when something reaches a certain stage in my CRM pipeline, then I want you to go do a set of actions. And the actions may happen in other systems. Or it may happen in the CRM, and there may be dependencies, there may be filters, there may be paths. It can get crazy, but in a sense, it's just what ties together different things, so that a piece of data in one system can be sent to the other system, and you tell it, this is somebody's name, this is their email address, and it's treated the same across systems. So thank you for asking that question up front. Michael, you were talking about, like, what is the effect on employee engagement and getting ideas from our team. One of the goals of this is we ask our team to do a lot of stuff. We want them to document things carefully. We want them to clock in so we can track our time. We want them to record notes. We ask them to do a lot of things, usually on a very small handheld device. And so it's in our interest to do what we can to make that work as easy and as painless for them as possible. And you're right that the people who are in the field doing the work, doing the processes, should have a much better sense of what is needed, what they go through. And so, yeah, I think when we started, it was a lot of very top down. We're going to do this. We're going to do these processes, but the processes exist for the people. The people are not there for the IT system. And so that is something, as the longer we go on and as people learn the sorts of things that we can do, yeah, we do get a lot of people saying, hey, what if we could do this thing? And then we can go research that and say, yes, we can do it, or we don't know how to do it, but there seems like there ought to be a way, and it'll go on the list. I certainly hope it leads to better engagement. I think it leads to lower frustration. There can be a big, certainly in our industry, so we're roofing, solar, there's always the potential to be a big disconnect from office and field. And to be honest, one of the things that one of the reasons why we care so much about automating processes is we want people to be in the field. We want less office, more field. We don't make money with people sitting in an office most of the time. And so we are looking for ways to reduce the number of people who are in an office and get out in front of customers on jobs. That's where we learn. That's where we generate value. So yeah, we get a lot of great ideas from the field, and I hope that continues to grow.
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask one more question here. Maybe it's just the culture that you've created at Weddle Sons, but have you done anything specifically to solicit that feedback, or to maybe open that door so that your team out in the field feels like, hey, Eric and the C-level people, they want this feedback? Because what you said was, like, when you're talking about like less frustrations, those kind of things, I think back to when I my early days at CompanyCam, when I was on the phones and I would talk to owners primarily that would tell me, well, we need these photos and we need this data capture,
right?
But my guys just won't do it. I can't get my guys to do it. And I'm thinking then it's like, there's some disconnect there where there's not having that dialogue. Do you have any tips or tricks around that? Because I know that it's easy for us to be talking about, like, oh yeah, having great dialogue with your team in the field and getting ideas from them, super valuable. But if somebody's on this, webinar, and they're saying, how do I do that? How do I solicit that feedback in a way that I'm actually going to get quality feedback versus CompanyCam's terrible. It doesn't work for me. And, because that's not what we want here. It's like, hey, let's get the solution for you guys so that you can go and be efficient.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think we could grow a lot in that area. I don't have great answers for you. Probably the main thing that we do right now is, rather than a structured way of soliciting feedback, all of us try to spend time in the field. And so basically everyone in the company will be out on job sites at some point wearing a tool belt. Last week I was in Colorado out on a job site with tools to learn what's going on and to talk to people there. Alan, our president, frequently puts on a tool belt and goes and does service and repairs, or works on a job site, and so does pretty much everyone else. And so that's right now, that's our best way to connect to the needs of the field. But I think that we do a lot better in that area. Right now, so our admin team brings a lot of ideas. So people who are working in finance, accounts payable, accounts receivable, those folks are closer. I work with them more closely each day. They bring a lot of ideas. We could do a lot better about getting ideas from the field. But like you said, one of the very first things that we did with CompanyCam was just pre-populate jobs. And it really makes In fact, even using CompanyCam itself was an effort to make life easier for our team. Our CRM had a native photo capture ability. Great CRM, terrible photo management, just awful. Did none of the things that I really was looking for. CompanyCam did everything that we were looking for and is easy to use. And so we said, hey, we can just bolt this on to Pipedrive. We can create, instead of sending someone to a job site and they have to create the job and enter the address, and they're going to get the capitalization and punctuation wrong and misspell the client's name. We know that information before they go out there. So when we know that job's coming up, project stage advances, that stuff's pushed into Pipedrive, they show up on the job with your wonderful geolocation. It says, hey, it looks like you're here, and they are. And so those sort of things drive adoption.
Absolutely. And I think you answered the question really well. And I think like there's a lot of ways, obviously, to solicit that feedback, to get that feedback, but staying connected to what's happening in the field, I think, is as important as any. Again, thinking back to my days, I just was talking with our sales managers about this today when I was on the phones. I would always love to find that like right hand office admin. So if I was trying to sell you, Eric, I would figure out who your like source of trust in the office was. And I would make sure he or she was on every call with us as far as Zooms, because when I'm showing something in CompanyCam, you may say, like you said, our CRM already has something like that, or we don't have a problem with that. And Jan in the office. If she was on the call with me, like, she would have maybe a different feeling or something. And like, just making sure that you are connected to the office, to the field, feel their pain points so that you're like, oh, actually, we do have a problem with that. Like, we might have a tool for it, but maybe it's not a very good tool and there's something better for us. And I think that's kind of like the graphic that you showed me earlier, like that kind of goes to show that like you probably have tools that do some of those other things anyway, but they're not easy to use, or they weren't maybe intended to be used in a way that you are using them. And so it's like, oh, we'll just go find something else to, like you said, bolt on to this central hub.
Yep.
As far as, so we talked a little bit about the guiding principles, the automation, the process automation. Do you have any examples? Because what's great about the contracting world is while your actual, contracting is different as far as like if I'm putting a roof on, if I'm doing solar, if I'm refinishing a bedroom or a bathroom, that's all different. But the processes are very similar. So from lead captured through actual, construction, like you're doing the same things. Do you have any examples where you've been able to say like, hey, this was something lead capture or communication? You've shared a few, but do you have any of those examples where like, hey, this is where we've really become more efficient?
Yeah, we've got several. One, I'll just share one because it's kind of my pet project, and it's not, again, it may not be as critical for the whole business, but it was something that met a need. We got, like many of you probably get supplier invoices frequently. If we're running several teams or a dozen teams in the summer, we might be getting 20 to 30 supplier invoices in a day, certainly 10 to 15 regularly. And recording those we use QuickBooks. Recording those in QuickBooks we had two options. We could manually enter them, or we could outsource them. When you outsource them, it's costs a couple dollars per document, and lead time is about 3 days. When you do them internally, it's 5 minutes, 4 minutes per invoice, something like that. And so one of the things I worked on this spring is a way to parse those automatically. And there's great programs that parse documents. They'll go through a document and extract, like, here's the invoice number, here's the amount, here's the PO number, here's the job, here's the sub account, so we can match it to a branch. And we built something that we'll take this 18-page document and scan it, chop it up by individual invoices, send those invoices to a parser, extract the information, create the bill or the credit memo in QuickBooks from that in a matter of minutes. And we've run, year to date, we've run 2,500, 3,000 invoices through that system. And so we've only been using it for a few months, but, we're saving, several $100s a month of that, but then also hours, hundreds of hours of manual review time. And now it's built and it'll run indefinitely. And so that's something where we've saved, well over 100 hours of administrative time in reviewing it. And now that admin can answer the phone and talk to clients because we're getting a lot of calls.
I love it. I love it. So that was a pet project. Do
Yeah.
you have any example? I think that's awesome though. And like, that just goes to show, and like when you were talking earlier about, how technology's really advanced in the last like 6 years, kind of, I think we're on the precipice of like technology really exploding. You referenced Chat GPT. I mean, we're going to be able to do so much with, with AI and some of these things. For you, how important is it to kind of stay cutting edge, but also stay grounded in what you want to accomplish? Because that's a little bit off topic here from an efficiency standpoint, but I think, some of the things that are going to be possible are going to maybe be perceived as shiny and cool and awesome. We should go do that, but being able to apply them to our business, and do they actually make us more efficient? How important is that going to be, do you think, here in the coming years?
Yeah, no, I love that thought about staying grounded. And going back to what I said before, like the people do not exist for the technology. Like it's here to support our objectives, our mission. The things that I think are like the things that really keep us grounded are we are in the business of delivering good client outcomes, delivering good quality experience to our clients that is, puts them at ease, that is as low stress as possible and as dependable as possible. I say those nice words. We don't do that all the time. We frequently fall short of that. Process itself allows us to deliver better, more consistent outcomes. I love the checklists that are in CompanyCam. I think you guys, I don't remember when you guys added that, maybe a year and a half ago. The day we saw that announcement, we were like, this is the perfect thing, because we had a printed laminated checklist with a wet erase marker that we sent out on every job. And we're like, take your pictures in CompanyCam, check the things off on the sheet. Well, now it's all in one place, and it makes it easy for our project managers. And by following that process, we deliver really good client outcomes every time. When we don't follow the process, we forget stuff. And so that's just a key principle for us, is like whatever we're building, whatever we're trying to add, it should work toward making this a better place to work for our employees, delivering consistent, good outcomes for our clients.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth there with that last line, because like as you were talking, I was like, holy cow, you keep referencing like that experience for the client, and giving them the best experience. And I use the word client because in the contracting world, you want to retain clients. Like,
right.
Yes, you're replacing their roof today, but when you've got an office in Colorado and you're around Denver and they get a massive hailstorm, it's like, I want people that I've delivered a great experience to previously to say, I want to work with Weddle Sons on my project again this time. But you hit the nail on the head there, talking about, making it a great place to work. And I think that piece of just like having great client and, employee interaction drives great retention as well. Like I hear all the time, I'm pretty active in the, Facebook groups and the different chat groups, and retention is one of the biggest hot button topics out there. It's like, I can't keep my employees. And it's, there's no like silver bullet. Like it's always going to have some turnover, but giving them a great place to work and giving them great interaction with their customers that they're facing every single day is a great place to start, from that retention piece. And so I love how you are talking, efficiencies and making sure that it's, getting rid of those redundancies and all those things. So
Well,
kudos to you
it's
guys on that.
aspirational. It's not a reflection of where we are today. It's something we have to keep working on pretty hard.
Yeah. So, and I think that's a big piece. You have that one graphic, and I can either share it, or if you want to share it, that kind of shows from the form fill on your website all the way through moving to a production board.
Yeah.
Because where you talk about being aspirational, whether that's the client experience, your employee experience, whatever it is, I think that you hit the nail on the head again, where you're saying it's like we're continuing to improve it. I want to make sure everybody watching today says, no matter where you're at in your efficiency like path, it's never done. It's always it's always evolving. You always have to be evaluating and improving it. That's my favorite takeaway with the COVID time, was people were able to, because of a complete change in how they could operate businesses, and kind of even out of fear, they were willing and able to look in the mirror and say, where can we get better in our businesses? And we found a lot of outcomes from COVID where it's like, oh, well, we were forced to do this, but we can actually do this on a daily basis. We don't have to do things the way we were doing them. So like, you're always evolving and improving this. But yeah, let's dive into kind of just how you guys have pieced this together.
Yeah, completely agree with that. That's probably the message I would just share with people. Like, just take one, like find one thing that you can make better. Take one step, try one thing. It's very iterative and it changes. So I just threw together, this is a little bit insane. We should not use this many things. It's ridiculous that we use this many things. And we kind of go in this stage of, oh, here's a bunch of things we want to add. We're going to just pick those off and add them in. And then we get to the end of the year and think, this is ridiculous. We need to consolidate. So we go through that every year, or many times throughout the year. But again, we use Pipedrive as a customer relationship management platform. We use Zapier to connect it to many other things, including CompanyCam. And I'll give one example, just like we are very linear process driven in much of what we do. So this is an example of a kind of re-roof sales pipeline. And so this ribbon in the middle represents the different stages that we have created in Pipedrive. And Pipedrive is very customizable. So you can make it do whatever your process is, you can make that. That's what we like, because every company can be a little bit different. So we collect client lead information from our website. We use a plugin called FormSite. Why do we use FormSite? Because 7 years ago, that's what we found and it worked. There's 17 other things that will do exactly that. We collect information, it comes into our website. Now, we don't want to create a CompanyCam project for every lead that comes in, because we get some spam ones. We get some that are going nowhere. We get some that are out of our territory. Well, I don't want to clutter up our other systems. But once we've kind of pre-qualified that and we move it, all right, we've got an inspection coming up. So we slide the deal over to the next stage. Then Zapier, that integration piece, it goes out and says, I'm going to take all this client information. I'm going to create a folder in box.com where I'm going to put some documents, a roof calculator, some other things to facilitate creating a quote. Then I'm going to go out and create the project in CompanyCam. But it's a two-way arrow. And so when you create a project in CompanyCam, it creates a project URL. It creates a specific web address for that project. So it'll grab that and bring it back into Pipedrive and stick it under the details. So whenever I'm going through our CRM and I think, I want to see the pictures, I don't have to go find the project in CompanyCam. I just click the link. It's right there, right at the top. And then maybe we want to do an inspection form. And one of our, our selling points with supporting real estate professionals is we'll do roof inspections and deliver that to you. And so we'll dispatch, we'll move it into the next stage, and it will dispatch a customized form to go through and inspect the roof and collect pictures, make notes, write comments. This is something I'm hoping you guys will kind of develop more. I know your templates reports, you're getting there. We'll talk about that more later, but and then our guy in the field will get his phone or a tablet will buzz, say you have a dispatch for inspecting this. They'll fill it out, they'll go do the inspection, hit submit. All of that information they collected comes right back into Pipedrive. What's the shingle type? What's the, what date did I do this? Any other details? Throughout this process, we're recording certain dates, and we just use Zapier to do that. So we know when the bid came in, but there's certain milestones that we want to record. And this is relatively new. We said, hey, we need to start doing metrics. We need to look at how long stuff takes in this, to move from stage to stage. Well, okay, then we have to record the dates. So we use Zapier to just record data points that we can later use when we're running performance metrics. Something moves all the way through and we sign a contract. Great. Well, our CRM doesn't have a great built-in team calendar. No problem. We'll push this information out to something else. We're actually using Airtable now instead of Smartsheet, but this has a great visual calendar that lets everybody see it. So we're going to push it out to that calendar. And yeah, they're going to be a customer. We're going to be creating an invoice. We're going to have bills that are attached to their project. So let's go ahead and create the customer in QuickBooks. We already have all the information. No need to re-enter it. And then moves along. We get to the final stage and it moves it into the next pipeline, hands off to production. This looks different than it did 3 years ago, than it did 5 years ago. It evolves over time. We find something new. We think, hey, maybe we're doing this in the wrong order. We'll change it around. Again, each of you know how to run. You've learned the processes you want for your business. You can use the tools to support your process.
Yeah. And you've kind of brought us full circle to that initial, when we were talking about the 85% top line revenue, 39% overhead. And you're talking about here where you're like, yeah, we just recently added this, inspected date, bid sent date, those things, because you said we needed to get to where we knew our numbers a little bit better. And so it's like, you're not going to know all the numbers. You can't just say, oh, like, because I was on a webinar with Eric and Michael, like I've got to learn all my numbers and I got to learn them right now. But, figuring out, like, the only way you can become more efficient is if you have that baseline data and, learning that data and deciding like, hey, you want to get better here. Because I'm guessing you have different goals and metrics that you say from the inspected date to the bid sent date. We want to get that shrunk as much as possible. And from bid send date to contract date, we want to shrink that as much as possible. And you're able to, look at those and analyze, well, what are we doing to, make those more efficient and increase those. And
some of these things also, it lets us, we could have a whole other session on metrics, then I should probably be in the audience on that one. But, there's lagging indicators. I'm CFO. I get to the end of the month. I get to May 10th and look back at how April went, but too late to change anything there. And in fact, it's probably too late to change anything in May. But there's other things that are leading indicators. How many leads came in this day? How many bids did we send out? How many inspections did we do? And so some of those things let us see in more real time. Are we going on the right? Are we trending the right way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is a beautiful like illustration of not only like the process, but like how you've added pieces to this process over time. And like you said, this looks different than it did 3 years ago or 5 years ago. I would bet in 6 to 12 months, if we looked at this image again, there's going to be something different on there. You're going to make some sort of iteration to this in your process. So we're kind of running up towards time here, Eric. I really appreciate you jumping in with us today. I do want to open the floor up to any last minute questions that people have for you on, any of the efficiencies processes that you've added. I will also work with our marketing and content team, because I think we could probably throw together a pretty awesome blog just off of this webinar and just your insights and knowledge into creating these processes and efficiencies.
Yeah, and well, people have a minute to think about that. I just want to say also, like, for each of you, this may not be the project that you are able to undertake, but you probably have people in your team that would have really good insights on this. And I'm the one here talking about this, but I had just an incredible guy that helped me get us started in this 6 years ago before I went to med school. I've got an incredible accountant, Katie, who has taught herself all of this stuff too. And so now I can come up with ideas and say, Katie, can you figure out how to do this? And she goes and makes it work. And then also goes out and sees other things that could be done and brings ideas.
Absolutely. I don't see any questions. Give it the last like 30 seconds here. While we're giving it the last 30 seconds, just kind of closing, appreciate everybody jumping in with us today. Hopefully you got some nuggets from this. I think if I were to say, like, hey, I'm a contractor sitting in the audience, the big thing for me was that understand, like, hey, building these processes and adding these efficiencies doesn't happen all at once. It's, taking that first bite, that first step, moving in that direction. And I think that's oftentimes the hardest one. So hopefully, they've kind of heard some things and seen your illustration there and said, it doesn't have to happen all at once. This can be done piece by piece. And so that's a big one for me. And then I think, just involving your team, figuring out, where are we currently inefficient, is a huge piece as well. So I don't see any questions, Eric. I really appreciate your time today. And again, appreciate everybody jumping in and joining us today. Ned got one in under the buzzer. Does Zapier take the place of a data forma or some other business process? I would say data forma is probably the pipe drive in the example. I don't know what your thoughts are, Eric, but I think that's where that would fit in. Is data forma is your pipe drive. Zapier is going to help tie things or bolt things onto data forma that maybe don't have direct integrations.
Yep.
i.e. CompanyCam.
That's exactly right. There's great stuff out there. And honestly, if we were to start over, we might be starting with something that incorporated a lot of these things already. And we wouldn't be bolting on so many of our own pieces.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you all, Eric. Thank you. And we will see you guys next month for some more content. So appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate what you guys are doing.
Have a good one.
Talk to you soon.